The only thing worse than getting pantsed in front of your whole gym class and everyone calling you Little Nick for the rest of your high school career would be you avoiding these 7 wide receivers that I would bet my mortgage on in 2025 fantasy football. These are going to be 7 wide receivers that you do not want to miss out on in 2025. Before we get into things, though, please make sure that if you are new to the channel, you make sure to hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video whether you are new to the channel or not. So without further ado, let's get into 7 wide receivers that I'd bet my mortgage on in 2025 fantasy football. We begin with Puka Nacua, wide receiver of the Los Angeles Rams, current sleeper ADP wide receiver number 5 at pick number 8. Now, the preseason was a disaster for Puka last year as he suffered a busted bursa, and I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sin, so I had to hop on the Google machine and figure out what that meant. It was a knee injury for Puka Nacua. He misses the first 6 games of the season, leading to him finishing as the wide receiver 26 on the year in PPR, but he was the wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game, which now marks back-to-back seasons for Puka Nacua as a top 6 point per game wide receiver. He's been in the NFL since 2023, and both years he finishes inside of the top 6. Now, a lot of people are going to make a very big deal out of Davante Adams joining the Los Angeles Rams. They will say that this is going to put an anchor on Puka Nacua, and they're going to throw him into the ocean, and he's going to drown, right? He's not going to be able to have that great season because they have Davante Adams. But to me, I think about this situation like Puka Nacua in the past. Him and Cooper Kupp could both coexist. Think about the Cincinnati Bengals. They have Jamar Chase, they have T. Higgins, and everyone likes both of those wide receivers because they can both coexist and have great seasons together, and that is the exact same thing here with Puka Nacua and Davante Adams. I love both of those guys at their current ADP. So in 11 games, because again, he missed the first 6 games of the season with that knee injury that he suffered in preseason, he had 106 targets, 30th at wide receiver. He was averaging 9.6 targets per game, 79 receptions, 19th at wide receiver, 7.2 per game, 990 receiving yards, 24th at wide receiver, 90 per game, and 4 total touchdowns, 49th at the wide receiver position. In terms of efficiency, this guy jumps off the page in efficiency. He was first in yards per route run with 4.07, third in yards per team pass attempt with 2.69, and fourth in true catch rate percentage with 109.7%. Puka Nacua, in my opinion, is one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League, and I do not believe he gets enough credit for how he started off his NFL career. As Ron Stewart put on Twitter, only 5 wide receivers have hit 500 plus PPR points through their first 28 career games. Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Randy Moss, and Puka Nacua. Now, we all know Odell Beckham Jr.'s career didn't end up playing out like Randy Moss, right? He didn't end up having that promising finish due to injuries and all the other things that happened. He hopped on that boat. We all know what happened, but this is a great group of wide receivers to be with. Puka Nacua, again, deserves more praise for what he has been able to do through the first 2 years of his NFL career. If you look at this tweet from Ian Hardis, Puka Nacua propaganda, and that is exactly what this graph is. Wide receiver, yards, and targets per route run in 2023 through 2024 with a minimum of 100 targets. And right at the tippy top is Puka Nacua, ahead of guys like Justin Jefferson, ahead of guys like Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, the guys that we unanimously consider top 3, top 5 wide receivers at the NFL level. Puka Nacua is at the tippy top. He has one of the best play callers in the NFL as a head coach in Sean McVay. He has an incredibly competent quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who in any given game could, hop in the hot tub time machine and go back to all those years in Detroit when he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, this is a combo like peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter jelly time. I believe very heavily in Puka Nacua as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And again, I don't believe that the addition of Davante Adams is magically going to sink the metaphorical battleship that is Puka Nacua. And Puka Nacua has been putting up these crazy fantasy football numbers while scoring just 6 receiving touchdowns in 2023 and 3 in 2024. Because we all know they love Kyren Williams in the red zone. You already know Devontae Adams is going to be mossing motherfuckers in the red zone. But even without scoring 8+ touchdowns, Puka Nacua has been this good. So if he could put together an 8+ touchdown season, we could easily see Puka as the number 1 wide receiver. Again, people need to give him a lot more credit, and they do. His ADP at the end of the first round, I am picking him there all of the time. And he even has some extra motivation as Puka Nacua's longtime girlfriend has asked for the court to confirm that Puka Nacua is actually the father of the unborn baby. He's got some baby mama drama. He's going to be even more motivated this season. I love Puka Nacua in 2025. And in case you didn't notice, that was obviously a joke about the baby mama thing. It's actually true, but that has nothing to do with how he plays this season. Maybe, though, it does give him that extra boost up because he's angry. And you're not going to like him when he's angry. He's like Bruce Banner, the Hulk. At number 2, we got bdge, Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars, wide receiver 8 at pick number 11, wide receiver 4 on the season last year, wide receiver 12 in points per game as a rookie. 17 games played, 7 games without Trevor Lawrence. Now, there's going to be some people in the comment section that say some of the most insane things. Nick, don't you realize that he actually played better with Mac Jones? Does that mean that Mac Jones is better than Trevor Lawrence? And while Trevor Lawrence hasn't lived up to my personal expectations of him and the expectations that a lot of us threw onto him, giving him the Gawk 9000 special coming out of Clemson, calling this guy the next Andrew Luck, the next generational prospect, Trevor Lawrence is obviously better for the production of Brian Thomas Jr. when you compare him to Mac Jones or whoever they want to roll out there as the backup quarterbacks. Last year, 133 targets, 7.8 per game. He ranked 14th in terms of targets, 12th in receptions with 87, 5.1 per game, 3rd in receiving yards, 1,282, 75.4 per game, and he had 10 total touchdowns, 5th at wide receiver. If you look on the screen, Chris O'Brien put on Twitter, Brian Thomas Jr., only Jamar Chase scored more points from week 13 on after the Jags bye week. He was averaging 22.9 points per game. He was special at the end of the season, and again, that was with Mac Jones. BTJ was the only player last season to have 500+ yards after the catch while having a 10+ yard ADOT. And to further give the Suka Lamink special, the Gawk 9000 special to BTJ, this graphic here from PFF, regular season, he was the PPR wide receiver 4. In the playoffs, this guy was money like Johnny Manziel. It was legalized bank robbery. Floyd Mayweather, wide receiver number 1 inside of the playoffs. In terms of efficiency, he was 50th in target accuracy, but he was 8th in yards per route run, 15th in yards per target, 9th in yards per team pass attempt, and 2nd in dominator rating. They bring in Liam Cohen, who did wonderful things with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season. And there's going to be people, just like with how we talked about Devontae Adams, people say, Nick, now that Travis Hunter is there, should we fully panic on BTJ? The answer to that would be very strongly, fuck no, baby. BTJ is still the wide receiver 1 on the team, but I think that both of these guys can coexist. Plus, I think Travis Hunter might not be the best in fantasy for his rookie season, not be super consistent, but I do believe heavily in BTJ, and I think Trevor Lawrence will look even better this year under Liam Cohen. So I still believe heavily in BTJ, and don't believe any of that nonsense that BTJ is just better because of Mac Jones. You want to know why he was better? Because the team was force-feeding him the ball because they realized that, hey, when you target Brian Thomas Jr. heavily, the offense moves the ball better. What a shocker. How the fuck did that take so long for them to figure it out? But it did, and now they know the game plan. Feed the rock to Mr. BTJ. At number 3, we have Jalen waddled away, waddle, till the very next day. Bump, bada bum. Wide receiver 28 on sleeper, pick number 60. Now, if you ask me, prior to the Jonnu Smith news that's going to be on your screen right now, a part of that trade with Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jonnu Smith got sent to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So prior to that, with Jonnu Smith still on the team, and me honestly believing that the Dolphins would be able to figure things out with Jonnu Smith, which ultimately did not end up being true, I was really worried about Jalen Waddle because this was an offense last season that was centering on feeding the ball directly to Jonnu Smith. It didn't matter if it would result in a first down. There would be screens to Jonnu Smith instead of to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. There would be all of these design plays to get the ball to Jonnu Smith. And while I believe they would kind of shed away from that a little bit this season, with Jonnu Smith still there, I was not comfortable at all drafting Jalen Waddle, and I thought that we would honestly see a similar season, which was a complete and utter disaster that we saw last season. But now Jonnu Smith is gone, and while there was the rumor mill of maybe it'll end up being Kyle Pitts, it ends up being Darren Waller. The Miami Dolphins trade for Darren Waller, which as a Dolphins fan was definitely a little bit shocking because no one thought that they would trade for a guy that was fucking retired to play in Miami, but it is what it is. He is on the Dolphins. And while I have some hopes as a Dolphins fan, right, maybe Darren Waller turns back the clock. Maybe Darren Waller has a halfway decent season. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's be honest. Let's take the Homer cap off, which is not even on in this video, even though I'm technically wearing a Dolphins hat. I do think Darren Waller is, off the deep end of his career. I think he's finished. I don't think Darren Waller is going to be getting all these crazy designed pass plays like we saw for Jonnu Smith last season. Frankly, I just don't see that. And I believe that is going to be able to really heavily open the door up for Jalen Waddle in this offense. Jonnu Smith last year had 88 catches, which was the 4th highest at the tight end position, 5th in terms of yards, and 2nd in terms of touchdowns, 884 yards and 8 touchdowns. Again, taking him away from this offense really does move me to believing a lot more heavily in Jalen Waddle, because his price before this, to me, was too damn high for me to even remotely consider selecting him. Last year, he was the wide receiver 50 in terms of points per game, and that was by far the worst season of his career. Prior to that, he's ripping off 1,000 yards in 3 straight seasons. He's the wide receiver 21 in points per game in 2023, wide receiver 12 in 2022, wide receiver 15 in 2021. So in my opinion, last year is an outlier. It's not the normal for Jalen Waddle. It's an outlier. And a lot of people were having that argument with Jonnu Smith on the team. And again, I believe that was fugazi. That was a bad argument to make. But now without Jonnu Smith, I believe Jalen Waddle's going to be back to getting those designed plays to go his way. I think he's going to be back to being the, not necessarily focal point of the offense, because we know that's Tyreek Hill, but being a mainstay piece inside this offense, not going invisible like John Cena, where you can't see him in multiple games throughout the season. Again, last year was a bust for Jalen Waddle. Had you have drafted him, you felt like a straight up fool walking, talking with your pants on the ground and your hat turned sideways. 83 targets, 58 receptions, 744 receiving yards, 2 total touchdowns, all outside of the top 38. He was 82nd in terms of total touchdowns, though he was still getting open, 14th in route win rate, and 39th in target separation. Again, I understand that you got absolutely spit roasted by Jalen Waddle last season, but I think much brighter days are ahead for him, and I really do believe that you should be investing him this season due to the fact that you are getting such a strong discount. Next up, we move to George Pickens of the Dallas Cowboys, sleeper ADP, wide receiver 29 at pick 61. But before we talk about George Pickens and the other wide receivers on today's list, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. Underdog has a great offer for new users today. If you sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. My favorite thing to do over on Underdog is to do their best ball drafts. Their main tournament, Best Ball Mania 6, has $15 million in total prizes with $2 million to first place. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, and no in-season management. At the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you, and it is a great way to practice for your real 2025 home league draft. So make sure you guys do check that out, promo code Notorious, or click on the link in the video description to get your first deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus your free pick. They also have contests for lower entry fees than $25. So make sure you guys check that out. Promo code Notorious or by the link in the video description. Back on into things here, we got George Pickens, who was the wide receiver 42 in PPR last year in Pittsburgh, wide receiver 40 in PPR points per game. Now, George Pickens has been a guy that everyone loves talking about the amount of upside that he possesses. Everyone has been talking about that ever since he entered into the NFL. To me, that was always true. That was always abundantly clear because if you watch George Pickens play, you could see the upside. You could see how this is a player that could be top 12, top 10, top 5 in fantasy football. But frankly, whether it was the play calling or whether it was the quarterback play, the equation was just always wrong for George Pickens to have that humongous season. Now he's moved to Dallas, and he's not the wide receiver number 1 on the team because obviously that is CeeDee Lamb. But this is a scenario where he is going to have the best quarterback play of his career. I don't care what you think about Dak Prescott, but Dak Prescott is levels above the complete and utter dickless quarterbacks that were throwing the football to George Pickens throughout his career. And last year, according to Matt Harmon's reception perception was his career best marks, 72.8% success rate up against man, 77.6% success rate up against press coverage, 83rd percentile. And I agree with what he wrote lower down here. He was a significantly improved player on film, and it is difficult to overstate how seamlessly he fits into the Cowboys wide receiver room as the ex-wide receiver they desperately need along CeeDee Lamb. I fully agree with that sentiment. And again, while I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Dallas Cowboys are the best landing spot for any player, right? Because we know that the Dallas Cowboys, once it becomes playoff time, they end up deflating like a football in Indianapolis, right, when you're playing with the Patriots, okay? So George Pickens, sure, I get the landing spot worries you. And look, I get this guy is an absolute fucking shit for brains. I get that this is a guy that he might try to beat up Dak Prescott if he doesn't get enough targets in week 2. I understand that. But the upside is what makes me want to draft George Pickens. You don't have to draft him as a top 24 wide receiver. You're getting him as the wide receiver number 29. And if you're in a league with people that have pressed the George Pickens button before and have been incredibly disappointed, you may be able to get an even further discount than this. 14 games played last year. He missed 3 games with a hamstring strain. He had 103 targets, 7.4 per game, 31st, 59 receptions, 4.2 per game, 40th, 900 receiving yards, 64.3 per game, 29th, and 3 total touchdowns, 65th. But in terms of efficiency, he was 3rd in explosive rating, 15th in yards per team pass attempt, and 14th in yards per reception. The biggest plus here going to Dallas is, sure, he is going to lose his number 1 receiver role, but he is now going up against a defense that is primarily worried about CeeDee Lamb, so it's going to give him much softer coverage, a much stronger path towards having those big plays that we know George Pickens has in him. Is he the safest pick? No. He is far from the safe pick, but in my opinion, the upside is there, the skill is there, so we're going to hope that everything percolates here, everything marinates here in Dallas for a solid season out of George Pickens as the wide receiver 29 off of the board. And again, I really believe heavily with what Matt Harmon says. The tape tells a tale that he's really good. It's kind of just the quarterback play and other scenarios that were really tanking his value. Next up, we got Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. Sleeper ADP wide receiver 38 at pick 83, wide receiver 28 in PPR, wide receiver 41 in PPR points per game last season. We just talked about how quarterback play tanked George Pickens. Quarterback play had Calvin Ridley dead to rights. Will Levis is so bad that you can watch him play quarterback and then play one of those songs from like a Call of Duty montage back in the day where it's like trolling montage, right? And it's like do 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 do, right? He is like a circus act out there. He's like a clown without the red nose. Honk honk, right? That is how Will Levis plays football. The guy reeks to high heaven. He has no idea what he's doing out there. He looks lost. He needs a map. He is in dire need of GPS. It's like that episode of The Office where Michael follows the GPS and ends up straight in a lake. That is how Will Levis was operating this offense. It was really, really bad. Calvin Ridley, he had 3 games inside of the top 12 last season, playing in all 17 games. He was the wide receiver 6 up against the Jets. He sauced up Sauce Gardner, wide receiver 6, up against the Detroit Lions and Carlton Davis, wide receiver 5, and up against the LA Superchargers. He had Talib still out there. He had no idea what to do, wide receiver number 3. So, again, was last season good? Fuck no, baby. There was a stretch of games from weeks 3 through week 6 where the motherfucker didn't even score 5 total points. So we know that last year wasn't great for Calvin Ridley, but now he continues to fall and fall down draft boards. And while he is getting older, I believe Unc still got it because I think Cam Ward is going to hit him with a little revive. He's going to hit him with the quick revive and be able to revive Calvin Ridley for fantasy football. And if you look at this wide receiver core, this is clearly Calvin Ridley's wide receiver 1 on this team, right? There's no debate that Tyler Lockett in my pocket, skirt, Van Jefferson, or James Prochet, or any of the guys that are on your screen right now are Treylon Burks in Big 2025, right? He's going to steal the job from Calvin Ridley, right? No one believes that. No one with enough brain cells to rub together believes that. So Calvin Ridley's still the wide receiver 1 on a team with a quarterback who just drafted number 1 overall. And if you need some further backing of what I've been saying, that Calvin Ridley still got it, 9th in explosive rating, 10th in yards per reception, 91st in target accuracy would explain that he had 1,097 unrealized air yards first at the wide receiver position. So the ball was soaring and flying like Troy Bolton over his head. It was getting nowhere near him. It was thrown directly to the wrong fucking player, wearing the opposite jersey, right? The ball's going to Calvin Ridley, and then psych, some DB has it, and he's running straight to the crib, doing the hold my dick, right? It was embarrassing. Quarterback play last year reeked to high heaven, and I believe with better quarterback play, Calvin Ridley still has the skills to pay the bills. 120 targets, 7.1 per game, 18th, but only 64 receptions because, again, there were ducks being thrown his way, 34th in terms of receptions. 18th in receiving yards, and still 5 total touchdowns, 40th at wide receiver. I get that Calvin Ridley has left you with a sore behind multiple seasons in a row, but I believe we're going to switch things around this year, and Calvin Ridley is going to have his best season yet. I still believe in the talent. I believe in the quarterback play, and you are getting a huge discount like it's Black Friday. Wide receiver 38 for Calvin Ridley. And speaking of discounts, we got a great discount, right? They have the 4th of July sales when you go to buy a car. That's what we got on Stefon Diggs, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, sleeper ADP wide receiver 38 at pick 95. Now, if you're worried about Stefon Diggs because he did end up getting hurt last season, he tore his ACL in week 8, missing the final 9 games of the season. He was already seen in the early offseason processes working on the field in uniform without a brace on his right knee, so the knee injury shouldn't have any impact on him. I saw a video of Cardi B twerking on him. The knee looked like it was working well in that video as well. Pause. So Stefon Diggs is just like Calvin Ridley, clearly the best wide receiver on this team. Now look, you can spread some Kalen Williams, some Kyle Williams, propaganda. You could spread some propaganda about Jalen Polk or Kayshawn Booty or Demario Douglas, right? Some guys that we like, Kendrick Bourne. But in reality, we know when push comes to shove that Stefon Diggs is the wide receiver number 1 on this team. It is undisputed, like the championship of Ilya Taporia, who sadly knocked out my boy Charles Oliveira. He was the wide receiver 18 in PPR points per game last season in Houston. And remember, this is a Houston Texans team that had Nico Collins, that had Tank Dell, still wide receiver 18 in points per game. And he has put up 15 plus PPR points per game in 5 straight seasons, 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021, and 2020. I get moving to another team might prove to be difficult, but last year he moved to a new team with the Houston Texans, and he was still able to have those big games. If you look on the screen, 4 of 8 games, he had over 18 15 points in. Wide receiver 9 in week 1. Wide receiver 15 in week number 3. Up against the Jaguars in week 4. Wide receiver number 15. And up against the New England Patriots, his new team, he was the wide receiver 13. Now, Drake May didn't have this ferocious start to his NFL career, right? He wasn't going out there beheading the defenses. He wasn't going out there doing all these crazy tricks, crazy things, right? And everyone is on their knees loving Mr. whipping the knee pads out for Drake May. I get it. But the upside was there, and if you believed in Drake May out of college, you should continue to do so even after what happened last season. Stefon Diggs is the wide receiver 1 on this team. And again, this is another scenario where Unk still got it. I get he's coming off the ACL. And if we read in late August, oh, maybe he's not ready for week 1, even though I don't think that's even remotely possible, then we can backtrack, right? Because you don't want to chase injuries down in fantasy football, because the injury monster is hidden under your bed right now. Lock your doors. He's going to get you, right? The injury monster gets you every single season. Everyone gets hurt with the jitterbug, the injury bug. Every single year, you're more than likely going to have multiple players get hurt. So you don't want to chase the injuries down, because the injuries are going to find you, right? And it's not going to be a fun time. But right now, he's not hurt. He looks good to go. He had, in 8 games, 64 targets, 47 receptions, 496 receiving yards, 4 total touchdowns. Still pretty efficient. 26th in target separation, 8th in route win rate, and 18th in true catch rate. So while, you know, the news hasn't been the most positive on Stefon Diggs because he's allegedly snorting on that pink booger sugar, he's on his Jordan Bell fur, but at the end of the day, Stefon Diggs is still Stefon Diggs, and at wide receiver 38, to me, that I am all over that like white on rice. Final guy here, Pat Bryant, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos, sleeper ADP wide receiver 78 at pick 212. So in your normal league, Pat Bryant ain't even getting picked. You should be drafting him over on Underdog, promo code Notorious. We talked about it a little bit earlier. His ADP is rising, and it is rising quickly because of the positive news that we have heard about Pat Bryant. But before we talk about all this positive news, we're going to just talk about who Pat Bryant is. He played 4 games at Illinois and was drafted 74th overall in the 2025 NFL Draft. In case you can't do the maths, the quick maths, he was 3rd round draft capital. 12 games played in 2024, he had 53 receptions on 83 targets for 978 receiving yards, 18.5 yards per reception, and 10 receiving touchdowns at Illinois. Sean Payton said in a video, now I can't play the video on your screen because I don't want to get hit with that copyright strike, but Joe from Twitter, you can see the tweet on your screen, he sums this video up, and I have the video at the bottom. You can see Sean Payton. He looks a little bit angry, but he's actually not angry in that video. Sean Payton wants Pat Bryant to be Michael Thomas for Bo Nix in Denver. The Broncos need a reliable wide receiver too. They've got Marvin Mims, Devon Bell, they've got Troy Franklin, and those guys simply aren't cutting it. I kind of agree with that. There is enough fantasy goodness to go around for the Broncos wide receivers this year. I agree. In that video, Sean Payton says that Pat Bryant could basically be the Michael Thomas in this offense. And if you guys are younger, that's okay. If you weren't playing fantasy football, pause on that. If you weren't playing fantasy football back in, a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago, right when Michael Thomas was on top of the world, you might know, but Michael Thomas was him. This was a guy that was getting targeted every single play. Drew Brees was forcing the ball down his throat. If we can get Pat Bryant to potentially be the number 1 look on this offense, that is going to pay off bountiful for you. Again, he's coming off the board as free. So if you draft him, right, and you watch for a couple weeks and you're like, okay, this is not happening. Pat Bryant's actually on the bench, and all the other guys are having fun out there. Like fucking, you're seeing Cortland Sutton hitting the gritty in the end zone. Him and Marvin Mims are tag teaming the football in the end zone, right? Devon Bell is getting 1 million targets. Then what you do is you drop him like it's hot. You cut him, finito, it's over. But as of right now, with all this positive news that I'm reading, I feel like we should be drafting Pat Bryant for free at the end of our drafts. Because again, if you are able to find a guy that is getting that many targets late in the draft, it's over for your league mates. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video as well. It would help you out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on our screen if you haven't seen them already. I love you long time. Have a great one. And as always, good boy.